You would think that Israel, having seen all the miracles God did in bringing them out of slavery, across the desert, up past the land of Moab, and across the Jordan River to defeat the land of Canaan, you'd think that they would obey God after all that. Nah. It wasn't long before they were integrating with the local inhabitants as God had forbidden them to do. They were giving their sons to marry their daughters. They were giving their daughters to marry their sons, and they were worshipping their gods, and God was angry. So God handed them over to their enemies to oppress them. After 10, 20, 30 years of oppression, they would repent and cry out to God for help. And God would give them a strong man to lead them to defeat their enemies. This happened again and again. On one occasion, God allowed the king of Moab to defeat Israel. And so every year they had to pay taxes to the king of Moab. After 18 years of this, they cried out to God for help, and he gave them a strong man named Ehud. Now, Ehud happened to be a left-handed man. So he made himself a short sword, 1/2 meter long, double-edged, and hid it under his clothes where it couldn't be seen. And Ehud led the team of men who carried the tax money to the king of Moab. They went across the Jordan, went to the palace, and handed over the tax to the king. Then they left to go home. On the way, Ehud said to his companions, "You go on home, I need to go back to the palace." So he went back and he said, "Oh, Majesty, I have a secret message for you." And the king was upstairs in his sitting room, and he said, "Okay, everybody, leave." And all his servants left the room. And then Ehud went to the king and said, "Your Majesty, this message for you is from God." So the king was a big fat man, relaxing in his chair. As the king stood up, Ehud pulled out his sword and shoved it into the king's belly, went right throughout the back, and the handle disappeared inside the fat layers. The king fell down. Ehud went and locked the door. Now, upstairs in the palace, the king had a latrine which took the sewage to the outside. Ehud jumped into the latrine chute and went down outside the palace and went off home. Then he called out Israel and said, "God has given Moab into our hands, come." So Ehud led the Israelite army to fight against Moab, and they killed 10,000 of the best Moabite soldiers. So once again, God had delivered his people from oppression.